Welcome to the Digital Analytics Power Hour. Tim, Michael, Mo, and the occasional guest discussing digital analytics issues of the day. Find them on Facebook at facebook.com/analytics hour and their website analyticshour.io. And now, the Digital Analytics Power Hour.
Well, hi everyone. Welcome to the Digital Analytics Power Hour. This is episode 119. I have with me my co-hosts, but we are recording with a live audience at Marketing Analytics Summit Las Vegas. Let's make some noise! Awesome. Now, most of us were just here to hear Gary Angel, and he talked a lot of really uplifting and really amazing insights. And it's not just words, by the way, Jim. We also drink on this show. So, if you need a beverage, I think there's some floating around. And, it looks like somebody's got it right there. So just help yourself. There's little cups and everything. It's part of the show. But we wanted to go in a different direction. None of this positivity and tips and tricks you can take home. We wanted to air out some of the grievances. There's a lot of problems in our industry, and it's about time we talked about them. So we're going to go through a little shiny app that Tim built, and we're going to walk through some gripes, and we'll see how it goes. And we'll need some from you. So from time to time, we need the audience to chip in a little gripe we can talk about as well. So let's get started. And you guys ready?
Yeah.
No?
I'm ready.
Tim? All right. I'm in a foul mood, but I got this little flask, so I'm ready to rock and roll. Gripe number 1. You should A/B test every decision so you can be sure. Mo?
Well, I just think, I maybe it's because at the moment I'm going to too much conversion stuff, but I just think there are times where you understand, say through like customer service tickets, that an experience is bad for a customer, that it leads to some kind of really shitty experience, and that you just fix it. I think sometimes we're getting a little bit too crazy where we want to test every single thing, and sometimes the testing is to prove the value to the business, not to improve the experience for the customer. And that's why I'm kind of like on my high horse. I actually feel like it because we're up on a stage too. So,
but is there a need to go through the rationale that are we going to need to quantify the impact of this? Is that a valid input if it's clearly bad, but we don't know how bad?
Yeah, I guess. I think
our
to some
website
degree
is this much marginally better than the terrible website it was before. You really want to measure that change, or you just want to make the change because it's the right thing to do?
Especially when you think about the fact that by A/B testing, there's going to be a proportion of your customers that continue to have the shitty experience that you haven't fixed. So, anyway.
All right. Gripe number 1.
Gripe number 1. It was a doozy.
Tick.
Let's go. We need to be doing machine learning. You better take this one.
Yeah, this one was mine. So I think all three of us have drunk from the fountain of Matt Gershoff, who has preached ad nauseum not to chase the technology. So I feel like we've gone through buzzwords in the we need to be doing big data. Big data. This is a year into podcasting with Mo, and I'm slowly picking up an Australian accent. But even looking at this conference with kind of the co-located conferences like Predictive Analytics World and Deep Learning World, which doesn't say there's not a whole lot of value there, but I feel like Matt is the one who really brought it home and said we really need to get better at problem formulation and then worry about how we're solving it. And certainly machine learning is an arrow in our quiver, but we don't necessarily need to always use that one arrow.
Yeah, to be fair, Matt is probably the person that made me most learn this really hard lesson. When we were sitting at Super Week a while back, which is actually how the Matt Gershoff thing happened, where I came to him and I was like, oh my God, Matt, I've tried this model. It was so cool. I'm really excited. This is the first time I've used a random forest model. I've answered this question. He's like, Mo, what was the question again? And I told him the question. He's like, you could have just used a linear regression. But I was trying to use this really cool model because I wanted to find a way to use it. And I think that's happening a lot in our industry at the moment. Like, you want to do the shiny, cool, fun stuff, but the truth is, like, what's the easiest solution that's going to answer your question? So,
see, I thought this was your gripe because it didn't say AI. So We have to be doing.
That's a separate gripe.
We'll get to that one.
We'll just repeat ourselves.
All right.
These aren't in random order because it's AI driven.
Being asked to analyze the most common click paths to the site or the pages where people drop off.
I feel like how many people, show of hands, how many people will still get some version of this?
Okay, good.
Man, that has been around. That's
the dream is alive.
Hold on. Keep your hands up. That's about 250 people, give or take. Okay.
Just endless masses.
So, and I feel like this is one that it's crazy how long I have heard that. I mean, going back to, and I'll admit, when the first time I pulled up NetGenesis, I thought I was going to do the same thing. So it's like an understandable question, but then when you start doing the math of like, how many actual unique click paths are there through the site?
Yeah, and how many should I care about? This question for me becomes, because I get a chance to talk to a lot of different companies, this one is a really good qualifying discussion point. If somebody says we really need to understand every path, then that tells me a lot about where we are and what we need to do together to start fixing that.
I think the thing is, though, when you do actually, and I have done this analysis, and it's actually wasn't that painful, but pretty much like Tim was saying, when you actually look at how many different variations there are, which are thousands of navigating a particular website, even if you look at the top 10 paths, which is what I did, it was like less than 0.4% of our user base, which I think everyone thinks it's going to magically answer these questions, particularly about UX, like what should we fix? And it's like, actually, there are some places on your website you're meant to drop off. Like, I don't know, when you get to the checkout, you should probably finish. I'd be concerned. Well, sometimes I do go back, but anyway, I just think that customers are so unique, and I don't think this answers actually the question that the business has, which is where does our website suck and how do we fix it? And that's why I find this question difficult.
Yeah. All right. You've seen how the game is played. Now we turn to you, the audience. Who out there has a gripe that we can talk about together? I see one.
I think one of the biggest gripes I experience is people who want a lot of pie charts or like contribution without the absolute value of what's happening. So getting a lot of analysis that's very kind of one-sided or doesn't tell the whole picture.
Yeah, why have a pie chart when you could have a 3D exploding pie chart?
But is that just asking for data as opposed to asking the actual business question?
Yeah, I think especially with more entry-level analysts or even some of the stakeholders, they think that pie charts, because they're so used to seeing them, are easy to interpret. So certain visualizations maybe don't resonate as much with them, and they look for those bar charts. Obviously, we do a good amount, but pie charts definitely are one that we see requested from stakeholders.
People ask for it. That's awful.
But it's the tyranny of the status quo, which I think is a challenge. That if you imagine that, just say only that 80% of people who are in analytics, or 80% of companies are doing analytics quite well and 20% are not. My theory is that those 20% who are not are like poison, because they're repeating what they used to do, and that means they're training everybody who's receiving what they're providing that's what they should be getting, and those people move on to other jobs. As they're moving up in their careers, they turn to a more junior analyst and say, hey, at my last company I had X, I want you to give me the pie charts. And it's a vicious cycle, like the number of times that I've heard well, this is how we did it at my last company, without really being objective about, but was it effective? Like, are you separating what you did and you were used to from what was actually useful and could be valuable?
I confess, I had a stakeholder who used to like line graphs, like the only format she could digest. And I don't know what that weird thing was, but she had to, that was it. Now, I don't know if you've seen a dashboard with 10 metrics that are all line charts. It looks awful. And you're also like, which one do I look at first? Like, which is the most important? So she basically drew for me kind of what she wanted, which was 10 line charts, and I gave it to her. And then slowly over time, it wasn't like here's a bunch of other stuff, but like slowly I'd go back each week and I'd tweak it, and I'd be like, oh, I put this bar at the top to know how we tracked against our target. Oh, I added this scorecard so that other people could easily see what the number is. Oh, I added like a year on year so people didn't have to calculate. And I did it like very gradually over many, many months, but the end result was completely different to what she asked for, and she loved it. But I think sometimes...
In her mind, she'd drawn it up for you. You were just giving her what she wanted.
Yeah, apparently. But sometimes it is just about holding hands until you're like, oh, maybe a better way to visualize this one pie chart, and then you can like kind of hopefully lead them down the garden path.
Oh, we have another gripe incoming. Go ahead.
My recent-ish one that seems to keep coming up is anytime anybody is looking at any data or wants to dive deeper into XYZ, you know what would be interesting?
Oh,
not interesting. Tell me
here.
it's useful. Tell me it's critical. Tell me you need this information.
Full disclosure.
This is not
She read all of these
day.
before, so she
mine.
knows that she's jumping the gun.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Kiss sisters.
That's true.
That's
Interesting.
so
Interesting
good.
is terrible.
Yeah, interesting. Yes, I would love to work this weekend to pull together something that piques your fancy. That is what I delight to do. Yes.
I actually had a stakeholder who did that. He's like, I want you to change all the variables in your model because I have a hunch that this thing's going to be like true if we do this. I'm like, okay, so I'm building you a like pretty complex model here, which I can either finish or I can figure out, if your hunch is right. So which one should I do first? And he's like, the hunch one. So that's when I left that company.
My most favorite. All right, we're going to go back to our board, but we'll come back for some gripes from the audience in just a bit. Visualizations that rely on the audience to be able to distinguish between red and green. I don't know who put this one in our list. Tim, do you know?
I did not make it to, none of the sessions I went to were visualization this year. Did anybody go to a data visualization oriented session? Workshop? Okay then. Let the record reflect that no hands were raised. But I actually now have like Sim Daltonism is what I use on the Mac. But people will send me something and I'll fire it up and say, how's it do for Deuteronomy? And definitely have been able to send people screen captures back saying, this is not helpful to possibly your manager.
Well, controversial, I do use red and green sometimes, but there's a very strong caveat. So I do use red and green sometimes, like you'll have a little arrow, especially if you're doing like month-on-month or year-on-year comparisons. And if the arrow's up, I'll make it green. If the arrow's down, I'll make it red, which means it's not only red or green.
It's supplemental.
So people can still understand it if they're colorblind, but I would never use like a line graph with...
I thought you'd introduce a really cool segmented way of reporting where 8% of your audience is going to see something different.
Yeah, you just personalize your reports to the... Yeah, because
that would be cool.
You shouldn't not use it and punish the other 92% to not have that added. So yeah, as long as it's not the only thing you're relying on.
It
pisses me off. I feel like we're not working up to the gripe level.
Oh, gripes. Oh, man, gripes. That you shouldn't spend time making data pretty and that it doesn't matter what a dashboard looks like as long as it has the right numbers on it.
I'm actually melting down right now. Like melting. So I had a stakeholder who got really annoyed with me because in my like time estimations, I'd always but include, quite rightly, some time for data visualization and how I'm going to represent it. And this particular stakeholder liked things like pretty much straight as you'd like punched out a query, like give me the number, which put a lot of pressure on what can be part of the most important piece of that process. And so she said to me, she's like, oh, I don't need it to look pretty. I just need the right numbers. So you can just send me the spreadsheet. And I was like, sure. I once had to explain to her, anyway, this is not a person, I've sent raw data to people. This is not one of those people that you should send raw data to. And I straight away got an email back being like, what the hell does this mean? Does this mean that May was better than June or worse? Like, are we doing better than last year or is this year better? And I'm like, and this is exactly why people spend time on data visualization, because you don't understand what the heck it means unless I do that step. I think my sister actually does say it really nicely when she's like, it's not about making it pretty, it's about being understood.
I swear I was going to go to the audience and say, how exactly do you say that, Michelle? Because I definitely use it as well. That's the misperception when I talk about data visualization and people think I'm not artistic, I don't have design background, I can't make it pretty. And I definitely quote Michelle Kiss regularly saying that's the best way to put it is it's not about making it pretty, it's about making it understood. And oh, by the way, there are plenty of very tactical skills that even, it's not about design. You can learn some pretty simple rules and make stuff that is effective. It's a false thing when people say, oh, data visualization is about making it pretty.
Yeah, and I think we also have to recognize as analysts, we play on different playing fields, sort of, from this perspective. When it's me and one person and we're kind of going back and forth on an idea, we can do things very quickly, and I don't have to necessarily go through all the different things I might do to make that. But if I operationalize this for the whole organization, there's a much higher bar that we should be. And so it's about recognizing also, like, well, where are we at in this process and what should be. Because if the person's coming to ask for this report for the organization and they do it like that, then what will come out is a gripe at the end. Yeah.
Well, and related to that, when analysts have that perspective, sometimes they're like, look, I've been looking with the data. I can look at the spreadsheet and I can see that May was better than April, so clearly my stakeholder can as well. And they completely missed that they pulled the data. They knew exactly what they pulled. They had a mental image of what they were pulling, why they were pulling it, what they were looking for. The analyst has a ton of context already built in when the data is still in a pretty raw format, that then you drop that on somebody else. They haven't lived through that part of the experience. So they're like, well, gee, I as an analyst can understand it in raw data form. Why can't my stakeholder? And it's like, well, to be fair, you cheated. You spent 4 hours getting to the raw data form, and yes, you can understand it. They didn't have that, and you don't want them to have to spend 4 hours redoing it, because what value are you adding if that's the case?
Way to gripe on behalf of the business. Way to go. All right, let's turn it back over to the audience. I think we've got a gripe in waiting.
So my question is, why focus on operationalizing reporting when you can operationalize the data to integrate into other systems? Why focus on just making your reports better and more consumable? Why not take the data and get it into your systems and improve things via the data itself?
Oh, me. I think they're kind of both the same. Like, if I was building a report, it would also be about how do I operationalize this data. So I wouldn't necessarily think about it. And I wanted to talk about ETL today, and Tim was like, Mo, there's going to be some people here that are like not data engineering types, aka lots. But I think part of being a good report builder is actually ETLing that data into a format so that hopefully someone else can use it as well. So you're finding out ways to aggregate or to pivot it so that other people in the business can then use that, and also your reports don't take 50,000 years to run, and then people get really annoyed and think the tool's to blame, but more on that later.
So I had an item that grinds my gears. So basically, a virus started spreading through our organization over the past few years, and the virus is people coming to my desk or slacking me saying, quick question.
Did you get into our data set as well?
It's anything but quick, ever.
No, it just shows how in tune we are with the industry. That's a really good gripe.
Zero relationship between the length of the question and the effort to actually solve it. I feel like I got to where I just respond to people when they would like stop, because they're going to help me out, not even put it in an email. They'll just drop by my desk and say, hey, I have a quick question. I'm like, let me stop you there. Just so you know, the length of the question, in my experience, has zero relationship with the level of effort required to answer it.
You actually say that?
Yeah. Well, they don't stop at my desk now because I work from home, and that would be a little awkward. But
see, yeah. I go with a different method, and my method tends to be, because often like I'm working with particular stakeholders in the building, and I'll probably give them 20 minutes, half an hour, and we'll talk it through, and we'll talk about some strategies to answer it. Most of the time, there might actually be other resources in the company that can help do that. It's more just about like, hey, Jordana, who works in the merchandising team, is all over this, and this is how she could tackle it, is a good way I've found to handle it, because then they go bug the person in their team who actually knows about it. Or the other thing I've done is kind of like a bit of stakeholder-y, managery things where basically I'm like, I can answer that question, but it's going to take 8 hours of analysis work. Is that worth this quick question answer? And often they'll be like, oh, well, actually my meeting's in like 2 hours. And you're like, okay, well, like, nice chatting. Good luck with it.
Mo really wants to help people. I just want to piss and moan. We only have a finite amount of time. But it's not going to be cathartic if you're going to keep solving the problems.
Apparently, you're the genuine one.
So.
Oh, you've got a quick question? Let me just look at your calendar where we can set up an all-day session for us to dive into that. That's a good.
I mean, I actually, because and with humor, I think actually immediately saying, just so you know, like, I want to hear the question. I just feel like you should know, because it actually, because I got to where this was the agency where the virus spread. That's a good way to describe it, because it is like people are like, oh, I know they're really busy. I know they have a lot on their plate, but I'm just asking a quick question. So there were people who came by and said, look, I know I have no idea what it's going to take to answer this. I can articulate the question really quickly. I'd like to chat with you a little bit about it, but man, that's a killer.
It's also one where competency is its own curse too, right? Because the more well-known you are for doing a great job, the more people are like, quick question. All right, we've got another quick gripe. Let's see. The tagging requirements are simple. Just track everything. I'm certainly a fan of tools that track everything, but it's usually a distinctive mark of an organization who has no idea what they really want to do. And as such, drowning ourselves in all the possible data then becomes the thing to do itself. And it's a good 2 years. So, and then by then you should be able to find a new job and repeat the process in a new organization. No harm done, except continuing to set back our industry, which desperately needs credibility in this time of emerging accountability for data and its actions. There's a gripe.
This is actually the cousin to the quick question, actually, though, right? Because this is the one where they're like, look, I don't have to give you a bunch of requirements. I've made it really easy for you. And I'm like, well, by you, you mean me, and that you want to tag everything. You want tooltip impressions. Like, literally saw that in requirements for a website. We'd like to track tooltip impressions. But when it comes in just, hey, quick meeting, only takes 15 minutes, just tag everything.
Well, I haven't tried this yet because I've gone down a different route previously. But when I hear this, my straightaway thought is the user. Like, to me, as a user, if a company was like, let's just track everything they do and we don't know why we might need it, but let's just do it anyway, terrifies the shit out of me. So, I don't know. I think that you could potentially, if you had stakeholders in the business saying this, with GDPR and everything that's coming up with privacy and compliance, I think you could kind of flip it a little bit and be like, we're going to have to make a justification at some point why we track this thing, and we need to have a really good business use case. Okay, Tim's furrowing brows.
I feel like that may be a tough one, because the reality is you're tracking the user's core behavior. Making the case that tracking their mouse over on the global navigation is bad feels tougher. I mean, what the reality is if you track everything into a traditional digital analytics tool, your data becomes incredibly messy, right? If we had developers who say, yeah, we went ahead and put this random identifier on the end of everything so that now nothing is aggregated in your analytics platform, logically makes sense. You have super raw data. You can roll it up to anything. The problem is no business user actually knows how to roll it up to anything. So I make that case instead.
It does also, well, yeah, but your data set being so big and complicated and messy that you can't work with it, I don't know if that's necessarily going to get your stakeholders concerned, because they're like, I don't really give a shit how much data you've got. What I care about is, like, get me the answer to the question. And if you tag everything, then I'm going to have the answer to my question.
That spreadsheet of raw data is going to be a lot longer when you...
Well, spreadsheets.
Let me go ahead and set up that all-day meeting.
Yeah. We don't need to solve these problems. We're just pissing and moaning.
Next gripe. The belief that with enough data, the truth is knowable.
Matt Gershoff is in the room.
Yeah.
I feel like before we started recording, Jim asked how many people had not heard of the Digital Analytics Power Hour. So I feel like we could ask a show of hands. How many people have not heard of Matt Gershoff? See, he's got almost better.
He is way better traction than
way
us.
better brand recognition.
It's definitely the SEO
way to go,
strategy.
Matt Gershoff.
But to me, this is actually in the last few years where the big aha for me that we have been conditioned by the web analytics vendors, by Google and Adobe and WebTrends, and even the technology vendors out there today saying, throw your data in with AI, with enough data, you'll get to the truth. And what's, to me, like really intriguing is that the deeper you get into statistics and data science and machine learning, you realize everything's probabilistic, and that you're not trying to get to the truth. You can't get to the truth. You can increase your confidence, you can increase the likelihood of something, but there's a reason there's not 100% confidence level, right? It's not attainable. But we have been conditioned, and marketers have been conditioned to just want the answer. That's why we've always gotten frustrated with statisticians. Just give me the answer. Is it A or is it B? And it's like,
or don't give me a range. That's way too hard.
Yeah. I think it's a challenge for marketing, and it's on analysts to actually help educate because it's nuanced.
Actually, on this, it's really funny. We're probably going to talk a little bit about when you have multiple analytics platforms and you're trying to transition the business from one to the other. The really common thing that people talk about is like the source of truth. We're going to use this analytics tool because it's the source of truth. And I worked with a data engineer who spent his he actually kind of reminds me of Tim, like hands up in the air, really frustrated. And he's like, it's not a source of truth. It's a source of facts. It has a particular set of facts in that database, and we're going to use that to make our decisions, but it's never a source of truth. And shout out to Adilson, my main man. He's, never listens.
I like that guy.
But actually more troubling is organizations who've never conceived of a concept like source of truth, and so have multiple systems everywhere running the business in all different directions with no idea that they should be maybe trying to centralize that. So,
but there's a human nature. I mean, it's understandable that there's a human nature wants simplicity. They want clarity. They want things to be black and white, and stuff just isn't. It isn't black and white.
We need buckets to put things in. All right. Next gripe. The word insights.
Actionable insights.
Well, now we know those are dead. Those are no more, right?
Yeah.
Gary Angel killed actionable insights. You saw it here at Marketing Analytics Summit.
Or on a previous podcast.
We did a whole episode with Christopher Berry.
I forget most of what we
insight.
talk about. Yeah.
No. I always forget the definition. I mean, I don't know. That word gets thrown around so much, like it's, I want insights in my daily report, and I just don't use it. I've actually lost. There are people who have very, very strong definitions for what an insight is, which generally I think are great. The problem is nobody else is using them, so I just try to avoid the word.
So what do you, I've been asked for weekly, monthly, or you promise clients quarterly insights deck, whatever that means. So what do you use?
Well, in that case, I'm like, well, let's talk about that. You've changed nothing. I mean, they want insights and recommendations. I'm like, well, the first time I produced that monthly report, I came up with some things that you maybe didn't know, and I made some recommendations, and we talked about them, and you implemented none of them. You actually didn't really do anything except you ran a couple of campaigns, but a month later, you actually are expecting insights. So I've had that discussion saying, what do you want? Like, you haven't changed anything, or if you have changed anything, you haven't brought us in to actually understand what you're changing, why you're changing it, what result you're expecting. So, I mean, I probably turn into the cranky bastard, and I'm like, no, don't have it. Let's talk about what your hypotheses are. We can then go and figure out how we're going to validate those, and then that will give you something that you could act upon, and I totally steer clear of it.
See, but I think this actually comes up way more in reporting, where when you're giving, you're often as an analyst doing regular reports, and people are like, oh, you need to provide commentary, which is like a list of insights. One person even said to me, I don't want recommendations from you, I want insights. The product team will come up with the recommendations. And you're like, okay, sure. Whatever.
Well, but that's the insight in this case would be the product team will be coming up with recommendations.
Well, that's there are the tools out there that will basically take your digital analytics data and they'll convert it into prose, like a little fill in the blank. And they're like, look, now like people don't want to see visualizations of the data. They want to read text. I'm like, who made that pitch to your investors? Are you kidding me? Like, people don't like to read. I mean, 280 characters is like too much.
I think read some bullet points, yeah.
No, but the auto-generated one. But I've definitely railed about why because here's the thing. If they want that, let's just say that there are insights to be found in the data. They're likely not going to be automatically generated, right? They're going to take time. So if we want to get to where our increased velocity, say you're doing a weekly report, the data's available first thing Monday morning. Instead of just having the report with the facts, well-designed, easily just monitoring the business, or is anything out of whack that we should freak out about? Data may be out of whack, something you should freak out about. Maybe it isn't. But if you say, nope, that's going to come to the analyst first, now the analyst is going to spend between 2 hours and 2 days trying to dig in and find something. They're going to package it up and they're going to send it out. Then whoever gets it, they have to be out of meetings, getting through their inbox. So it's like Thursday before they actually can read it, and then, or the chances they're going to act on it that week, as opposed to if you educate. I mean, I went through that where there was I had inherited a report that was a weekly report that the client said, we're getting this from this other agency. They're delivering it to us on Thursday afternoon. And it's got a few little bullets that over time, by the way, weekly, it goes from something really interesting to I'm just regurgitating something that the chart already shows. And slowly, I'm like, if we just take that out, you can have data that you just know how the business is doing. And then if something looks odd, we all can think about what might have caused that. Like, let's get the information into people's hands. And yeah, as the analyst, I may jump in on Monday morning and try to figure out the why. But, I mean, surely others have. I've done wow, traffic went down, conversions went down, revenue went down. Why did it go down? Well, let me look by device category. Let me look by this. Like, wow, paid search went down. Oh, my God. Takes a little while to get to something happened with paid search. Oh, my God, paid search dipped horribly for like the last half of last week. That's taken me. And then I asked the paid search person. They're like, oh, yeah, we hit our budget cap and paid search got shut off. I'm like, well, I'm glad I spent those 4 hours. What if the paid search person had the same data, stuff went down, and it was like, hey, any ideas why this have happened? And the paid search person says, yeah, our budget cap got hit. It went down. We've saved an enormous amount of time and energy because we've tapped into the domain expertise of the other people. So I'm not saying we don't want to deliver them. I just think scheduling them is a disaster. It slows everything down.
I think it's also about the expectation of what an insight should be or when it should be delivered and what cadence. I think an insight is something you've got to come up with, and it's hard to predict sometimes how that will work.
So just back on that point. So let's say, okay, report goes out Monday morning automatically to everyone, yeah? Which is, to be honest, both of the descriptions you described, I've experienced a lot. It's painful. But the one that does sometimes concern me when it goes out without any commentary or context, the first thing that happens is you get 10 questions fired at you. If any metric has gone down, if any metric has gone up, the CEO is going to be talking about it in the weekly stand-up about how awesome it is, but no one gives a shit about why it happened. So then you spend your life digging into why did this number go down? Why did that number go down? And I don't know. Like I don't sometimes
but
think
if you
just
send it
giving
out, if you send it out with commentary, you don't think they're still going to ask it? They're just going to ask it 3 or 4 days later.
At least you're on the front foot and you're like, I can see that metric has gone down. I know they're going to ask why. Great. I'm going to look at that first thing, and that's going to be the first line of my email.
So I will admit that in practice, in the most extreme example of this on a weekly report, it was actually automated to the point that due to, shocker, Adobe Analytics didn't quite do everything it was supposed to. It was waiting for me on Monday morning, and I made sure that by 8 a.m., but I literally looked at it. There was no room for the commentary, and I manually sent it out. If there was something that was a KPI that really moved, I would still send it. I would say, hey, this thing went down. I don't know why, but I'm looking into it. So I would actually just include that. I wouldn't try to provide answers. I would say, I noticed X or Y. I don't have the answers. Hey, if any of you guys actually have the answers, because that actually, they could reply just to me. But I think some of that goes back to, there is a culture, that same report when you were describing earlier, the sea of data and slowly over time, I did the exact same thing. It was a sea of numbers that they initially got, and it took about a year to slowly kind of morph it into something that they could take a glance at. And I was helping kind of steer them to from a data visualization perspective, they were only looking at like 4 KPIs. There was more data on the dashboard, but they were the right KPIs. They were looking at them, and I would still get it into their hands by 8 a.m., and they loved it. They were like, this is great, and it saved me time from when I was trying to explain something that also I was external, so there may be something that everybody knew. If I waited for 3 days and then told them that they looked like they had a huge inventory problem, it would have been like, yeah, we all knew that. I guess we forgot to tell you. The old, oh yeah, we forgot to tell the analyst? That's not in the list. Anybody ever had that? Oops, sorry, forgot to tell you that campaign launched.
Yeah, we did testing on the website, and we fired like 50,000 million hits. And I think didn't tell you.
That's our shortest gripe, and I think it went for the longest period of time.
Yeah, we went on for a long time,
and we're not done yet.
No, I'm sitting here thinking about this, right? So the alternative to sending this out weekly is, you build a dashboard and hypothetically everyone goes and looks at it first thing Monday morning. That sounds great. But then...
they don't. If they have to go to
Yes, they don't. And they're lazy and they want someone to just give it to them and tell them what they should care about. And then suddenly the culture in the company is like, I don't know what's going on with our numbers. Like, no one tells me what's happening. And it's like, I built you this thing that you never go and look at. So,
but there's nothing stopping the analyst from going and looking at it.
Sure.
But then you're not there's not an expectation that you're going to do something that may or may not be right or valuable.
And what I would recommend, Mo, is that you build in like journeys into your dashboards and also forecasts.
Really?
Yeah.
That's good. Good throwback to the previous unrecorded session. The
Gary
podcast
Angel
listeners
quote.
will not.
Thank you, everybody. All right, we're moving on. The belief that machine learning and AI will ultimately just do analysis seamlessly with minimal human involvement.
The exhibit hall is now broken down. All those vendors are now gone, correct?
I mean, it would be great to allow for some of the quick question stuff, Hey, quick question. But, I was at a McDonald's recently where they had one of those new automated ordering systems. It took me 2 tries.
So that was the dynamic yield powered.
That's either not good for me or not good for their UI. It's probably just not good for me.
Well, actually, we talked about this a lot in our last episode about ethics in AI, and it's one of my favorite topics. So Finn Lattimore was on the show, and one of the things she talks about is that when we build anything in AI, it's not just like you shove in the data and it gives you an answer. Whoever is the person that's putting that data in, that's prepping it, that's figuring out how to treat every single variable, that's working out, they come with their own bias. And sometimes when you just shove data into a model, it's actually going to reproduce the bias that we have in our own society. So you think about something like bank loans or anyway, there's a whole bunch of examples. And I don't know, it's depressing.
Well, but it's a misunderstanding of the concept of feature engineering, which I'll admit, I didn't quite realize this until I was starting to dive in and try to do some of this as well. But if you think that you've got just raw hit-level data, you've got the raw data, you throw it into the magical machine, it'll find things. Well, there are transformations that require human thought. Like maybe I want to think of a variable might be, how many unique weeks has this person come to the website in the last 3 months? The raw data, it's there, that's captured in the raw data, but the AI is not so magical that it's going to actually be able to figure that out. We need to actually come up with, these are some features. We need to actually say, how would we flag the users this way? So that's the other piece that I think it's undervalued. And there's talk of like, well, there's automated feature engineering. I'm like, well, that's the pitch to the venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. Good luck on you. The reality is there's still a real need for humans to think about it and to understand the results, because this ties back to people thinking that the AI is going to give me the answer. It's going to tell me who will buy. No, it's not going to tell you who will buy. It is going to give you who is most likely to buy, and it will give you some confidence, but it's always going to be probabilistic. And you really ought to understand that before you think the machine is just going to like, oh, we have our drag and drop and insights are going to emerge automatically.
So this is a bad time to announce my new AI-based company that does attribution with cryptocurrency underlying it. Is that what
is it on
saying?
The Libra platform? Is it the Libra crypto?
Course,
the non-blockchain blockchain?
But it's funny, like you even think about shopping. If we were to just do a normal like predictive CLV model, so female shoppers typically shop with us like every month, and male shoppers might shop 2 or 3 times a year, but they do
We're talking about the podcast online store, by the way. We have extensive demographics on the...
But yeah, the guys do really big shops when they come. So when you're talking about like even just predicting something little like that, like the kind of little nuances that you need to understand about your customers in order to build an effective model.
All right, we're going to go to a lightning round, and you guys, I'm putting a new rule. You can only respond with like 1 or 2 words max. Ready? Go.
Useless.
The media analyst who doesn't know the proper format of a URL.
Oh my God.
You used your 2 words.
That's it. Moving on. You don't need anyone to do any ETLing, as everyone should do their own. All data scientists should ETL their own data for their own purposes.
Dangerous.
Mo's question.
Media analysts who don't know how to check whether a pixel is firing.
Good fucking Lord.
3. Again, 3.
No coding
I'm not good with
required.
numbers.
Just a drag and drop. One line of JavaScript. Every vendor.
Every vendor. Ever.
Multi-touch attribution.
Still a fan.
Usually bullshit. Candidate test requiring tests. Okay, I'm skipping that one. Too
that
long.
one was the best
Doing a
one.
podcast with someone who doesn't like StrengthsFinders 2.0 or emotional intelligence.
Bogus.
Ruling.
All looking at Tim.
That's right. The belief that machine learning is just a fancy way of saying statistics with computers, which has been around for ages.
GPUs.
There you go. All right. We're not going to do any more. We've got to wrap up. Thank you all at Marketing Analytics Summit Las Vegas for letting us be here with you, do the show with you. Thank you for your gripes. While we have a lot of gripes, we still love our industry. We certainly are super happy to meet you guys. Thank you all very much. For my two co-hosts, Mo Kiss and Tim Wilson, I'm Michael Helbling. And despite the road being long as analysts and us having a lot of gripes on the way, I want to encourage you, keep analyzing.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, or Measure Slack group. We welcome your comments and questions. Visit us on the web at analyticshour.io, facebook.com/analyticshour, or at analyticshour on Twitter.
So smart guys wanted to fit in, so they made up a term called analytics. Analytics don't work.
Analytics. Oh my God. What the fuck does that even mean?
This is, question. Digital Analytics Power Hour. How many people have not listened to this podcast? Okay, you're totally in for a treat. And Gary Angel, far be it from me to presume to disagree with you about anything in this industry. However, I have a bone to pick. You spent a few minutes talking about how talking never changed culture. After 117 podcast episodes of these people talking, they have had a serious impact on our culture. So I'll just that little bit. While they're getting ready, because they're going to plug in and there's chairs up there and they're getting their water and they've got to get a laptop, I would like to introduce them. You are about to witness the wonderfulness, the insightfulness, the irreverence of the dream team of digital analytics podcasting. The three magi of measure. The three musketeers of metrics. And I could go on. And so I will. The Harry, Ron, and Hermione of hits. The Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman of Webden. The Luke, Han, and Leah of analytics. The Kirk, Spock, and McCoy of monetization. The Edward, Jacob, and Bella of bounce rates for you Twilight fans. The longer this takes, the worse it's going to get. Okay. The id, ego, and superego of engagement. The bacon, lettuce, and tomato of tagging. The snap, crackle, and pop of page views. The Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria of mobile optimization. The three-ring circus of segmentation. The extract, transform, and load of data logistics. The Father, Son, and Holy Ghost of social sentiment. The wink and blinkin' and nod of not provided. The three stooges of stickiness. These are the Groucho, Chico, and Harpo of HTML. They are the faith, hope, and charity of Omnichannel. They are the hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil of Evars. Now we're just going to have to go to the animals. They're the three French hens of server-side cookies. They're the Huey, Dewey, and Louie of latency, the Alvin, Simon, and Theodore of third-party cookies, the Mama Bear, Papa Bear, and Baby Bear of bots, the three blind mice of multivariate testing. I could go on, and I shall. The three little pigs of path analysis and the three little kittens who've lost their mittens, and one of them is running away right now. They are the frankincense, gold, and myrrh of metadata. They are the rock, paper, and scissors of sessions. They're the 3 Mile Island of eye tracking. They are the reading, writing, and arithmetic of ROI, the executive, judicial, and legislative of visitors, the Kentucky Derby, Preakness, and Belmont of the back button, the red, green, blue of the buy button. They are the small, medium, and large of landing pages, the three-card Monty of the Monty Hall problem. They are the two sides and the hypotenuse of hypotheses, and don't make me get all the way to the good, bad, and ugly of UTM. They are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So I give you Michael Helbling, Mo Kiss, Tim Wilson. For the love of God, take it away.
Rock flag and grinds my gears. Got to get it all.